Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are stripping the paint off, a phrase that I guarantee every single person listening has heard.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe from a parent, a coach, or, one of those motivational posters in a corporate break room. The idea that suffering builds character. Or the classic gym mantra, no pain, no gain.
It's practically the bedrock of modern success, isn't it? It's a societal truism.
It is.
If you aren't hurting, you aren't growing. If you're not exhausted, you're not trying hard enough. It's just baked into everything from sports to startup culture.
Exactly. It's the water we swim in. But today, we're looking at a stack of sources that takes a sledgehammer to that idea.
Yeah.
We're analyzing a text that explores Stoic philosophy, but not the pop culture version we see on Instagram with the marble statues and all those Sigma male captions.
Right, and we need to make that distinction early. Because there is Stoicism, the ancient Greek and Roman philosophy, and then there is what I like to call Broicism.
Broicism, I love that.
You know the type. It's the version where you just act like a stone, let the world beat you up, suppress all your emotions, and then smile about it. It's about being invincible. But the source we're diving into argues that this is a complete corruption of the philosophy.
So we're doing a reality check. The sources ask a really uncomfortable question that caught my attention immediately.
What's that?
What happens when someone is drowning? Completely overwhelmed, and they say, I can't take this anymore. And the only response society gives them is, endure it. Everyone suffers. It'll make you stronger.
That is the danger zone. The material argues that this automatic response, suck it up, isn't wisdom, it's negligence.
Negligence, wow.
True Stoicism isn't about being a doormat for the world. It's about asking a critical, analytical question. Is this suffering actually training me, or is it just grinding me down?
That distinction between training and grinding, that is the whole ballgame.
It is.
So our mission today is to unpack why we love to glorify pain, the hidden cost of doing that, which is, frankly, much higher than I thought, and then finally some actual strategies to stop being what the text calls a voluntary victim.
And we really have to start with the psychology, because the source poses a core question. If suffering makes people twisted or bitter or just plain broken as often as it makes them enlightened, why do we still insist it's a virtue?
Yeah, let's get into that, because if you look at the research in these articles, we don't just endure suffering, we almost fetishize it.
We do.
And it's not because we're masochists. It serves a function. We get something out of believing in it.
It serves several deep psychological needs. The text breaks this down fascinatingly. The first one is just the human need for meaning. We hate random pain.
Yeah.
We are basically allergic to chaos.
If I stub my toe on the coffee table, that's just annoying. It's useless pain. There's no glory in a bruised toe.
Exactly. It's just physics and bad luck. But if you suffer for years in a difficult job or a toxic relationship, that pain is too big to be meaningless. You need that pain to mean something.
Okay.
If we tell ourselves this is training or this is a test of my spirit, it stops feeling like random injustice and starts feeling like a narrative.
It's a coping mechanism. If I admit my suffering is pointless, then I'm just a victim of bad luck or bad management. But if it's a test, then I'm the hero of the story. I'm Odysseus trying to get home.
Precisely. And that dovetails right into the second need, justification. This is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. Think about someone who has endured a terrible work environment for 10 years. If they suddenly admit that all that suffering was unnecessary,
Then they have to confront the fact that they wasted 10 years of their life.
right, and that is incredibly painful. That realization can break a person. So instead of facing that void, we glorify the suffering. It validates the time spent.
Yeah.
It allows you to say, I was right to stay because look how strong it made me.
It protects the ego. It's like a sunk cost fallacy for the soul.
That's a brilliant way to put it. A sunk cost fallacy for the soul. Admitting the pain was useless is just too expensive emotionally. So we double down on the virtue of the pain.
The text also mentions the need for control and order.
Yes, we want life to have a formula. If I endure X, I will get Y, you know?
Yeah, if I suffer now, I'll be rewarded later.
It simplifies a chaotic world. It makes us feel like if we just hold our breath long enough, we get the prize.
But life doesn't always work that way, does it? The sources are pretty blunt about this. You can suffer and just get nothing. You can burn out and just be ash. There's no guaranteed pot of gold at the end of the burnout rainbow.
And that's what the Stoics in this text are pointing out. They're very wary of laws that are drawn from our need for comfort rather than from observing reality.
Right.
But there is one more psychological trap mentioned that I think is the most dangerous because it affects how we treat other people.
Which one is that?
The strong versus weak line.
Oh, this is the one where if you endure, you're in the cool kids club, right?
In a way, but it's darker than that. We use suffering to draw a moral line in the sand. If you can take the pain, you are strong. If you break, or even if you just complain, you are weak. And the source argues this stops us from helping people.
Because if we believe suffering is good for you, then helping someone is actually hurting them.
Exactly. If I see you drowning, and I believe drowning builds character, I'm not going to throw you a life raft. I'm going to shout, "Kick harder, it's good for your legs."
Wow.
We frame empathy as enabling, like, I suffered through this in my 20s, so you should too. It builds character.
It's hazing.
Yeah.
You turn life into a fraternity hazing ritual.
And the Stoic rebuttal here is really sharp. They don't deny life is hard, of course it is, but they refuse to use suffering as a moral ruler.
Okay.
Just because you are in pain doesn't mean you are virtuous, and just because you are enduring doesn't mean you are wise. You might just be stubborn or scared of change.
So, if that's the internal psychology, why we want to believe it, let's zoom out to the system. The source talks about how this virtue of pain is manufactured by society.
Right.
It's not necessarily a conspiracy, but it is a mechanism that keeps the gears turning.
And it starts surprisingly early. The text points to education. From a very young age, we are often taught that obedience and endurance are more important than understanding why we are suffering.
I've seen this. A kid is overwhelmed with homework or stressed about a test, and the standard adult response is just, well, school's your job, suck it up.
Right. Instead of asking, why is this child overloaded, or is this curriculum actually effective?
Right.
The lesson is endure it.
Yeah.
We teach a high tolerance for pain, but a low level of critical thinking about the cause of the pain. We're training endurance, not problem solving.
And then that kid grows up and enters the workforce, and they are the perfect employee for productivity culture.
Exactly. The source highlights how exhaustion becomes a badge of honor in the corporate world. We confuse burnout with dedication. If you aren't tired, you aren't working hard enough. If you leave at 5 p.m., people joke, "Oh, half day today."
I hate that joke. It's so passive-aggressive. But it reinforces the idea that if you aren't suffering, you're cheating the system. The source mentions survivorship bias here too, which I think is crucial to deconstruct.
It is. We always hear the stories of the billionaire who slept on a park bench, or the athlete who practiced until their feet bled.
Of course.
The media loves that narrative. Suffer, overcome success.
It's the classic hero's journey.
But the source calls this looking at the incomplete picture. For every one person who slept on a bench and became a CEO, how many people slept on a bench and just developed chronic back pain and poverty?
We never hear those stories.
We rarely hear the stories of suffer, break, never recover.
The graveyard of silent failures.
Right. The Stoics want to see the people who broke, too, to understand if the suffering was actually the cause of the success or if the success happened in spite of the suffering.
That's a great point.
Maybe the successful person succeeded because they were talented, not because they slept on a bench.
Speaking of silence, there's a really interesting point in the text about the silence trap. The idea that the ideal sufferer is a silent one.
Yes. Complaining is seen as weakness, but the expert in the text makes a vital distinction here that I loved. There is dignified silence, which is a choice you make to not burden others. That's Stoic.
Okay.
And then there is silence because you aren't allowed to speak.
Forced silence.
When a society or a company praises silence, it's often just a way to keep people from questioning the system that's hurting them. If you speak up about the workload, you aren't a team player, you lack grit.
Grit, resilience, maturity. Language plays a huge role here. The sources call these words soft power.
They are weaponized virtues. Think about it. If I order you to suffer, you might rebel. You might say, no, I'm not doing that. But if I tell you that suffering proves your resilience, you might volunteer to do it. You'll protect the very system that is exploiting you because you want to earn that label. You want to be the resilient one.
It's manipulation disguised as a compliment. That's insidious.
It really is.
Okay, so we know why we do it internally, and we know how society reinforces it externally. But what is the actual cost? Because the bill comes due eventually.
Right.
The source uses this term erosion versus training. Can you unpack that?
This is the heart of the argument. We often confuse the two. Real training, like lifting weights or learning a language, it has a goal, it has limits. And crucially, it has a recovery period.
Right, you tear the muscle, you rest, you grow.
Exactly. But erosion.
Erosion is just grinding.
It is. There is no recovery. There is no clear goal other than keep going. The source argues that when we glorify suffering without asking if it's necessary, we aren't training people, we are eroding them. We are wearing them down like water on a rock. You don't get a sharper rock, you just get less rock.
And the damage isn't just physical, it's existential. The text lists some heavy consequences. Loss of self stood out to me.
That's a big one. When suffering becomes your identity, you forget who you are outside of the pain. You become the survivor or the martyr.
Right.
If the pain stops, you might actually feel empty because you don't know who you are without the struggle. You see this in people who retire and fall apart because the struggle defined them.
And then there's emotional numbness. I think a lot of people think Stoicism is about being numb.
That's the biggest myth we need to bust. The source calls it internal freezing. To endure constant eroding pain, you have to shut down your sensitivity. You stop feeling.
Yeah.
But the Stoics argued that isn't strength, that's just damage. It's like frostbite. You lose the ability to feel joy just as much as you lose the ability to feel pain. You become a zombie to survive.
There's a phrase in the text, legalized loneliness. That would hurt to read.
It's the irony of the strong, isn't it? The people who endure the best, who never complain, who always handle it.
They're the ones nobody checks on.
Exactly, because everyone assumes they're fine. Oh, Sarah's a rock, she's got this.
Meanwhile, Sarah is drowning.
Yes. Their strength becomes a cage. They are legally lonely because their competence pushes people away. They've trained everyone around them to believe they don't need help.
And the most chilling point for me was postponed living.
Yes. This references Albert Camus. The idea that we spend our whole lives waiting for the suffering to end so we can start living.
I just need to get through this week.
I just need to get through this quarter. I just need to get the kids to college.
But the timeline keeps moving.
Always. The goalpost always shifts. The source warns that suffering without rebellion is just postponing spiritual death.
Yeah.
You aren't living, you're just not dying.
Wow.
You are waiting for a permission slip to enjoy your life, but that sleep is never coming.
Okay, that is heavy. And I feel like a lot of listeners are nodding along, but also feeling a bit trapped.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, we have bills. We have kids.
Yeah?
We can't just quit our jobs tomorrow or move to a cabin in the woods to escape the grind. We are in the system. So what do the Stoics actually say we should do?
This is where the source pivots, and it's very practical. It explicitly says the solution isn't necessarily to burn everything down. The Stoic approach isn't to destroy the structure, but to dialogue with it, to live in it without being of it.
Okay, so let's go through the strategies. We have 5 of them. Strategy number 1 is a mental shift. Detach morality from pain.
This is the first step. Stop patting yourself on the back for suffering. Pain is not a medal. Working 80 hours a week doesn't make you a better person than someone working 40. It just makes you more tired.
It sounds simple, but that's hard to do. We want to feel like our pain makes us special.
We do. But the Stoics say, strip the value judgment away from the pain. See it as a neutral fact. I am tired. It's hard, not I am noble because I am tired. Once you stop treating it as a virtue, you stop seeking it out. You stop volunteering for it.
Okay, strategy number 2. This one I really liked. The secret garden.
I love this concept. It's the advice to keep a specific part of your soul absolutely untouched by the suffering. Even if you are in a terrible situation, a bad marriage, a toxic job, you carve out a space.
What does that look like practically?
It could be 10 minutes a day where you read something that has nothing to do with your work. It could be a hobby you don't monetize. It could be a private thought process. The rule is, the difficulty is not allowed to enter the space.
So you don't let the job colonize your entire mind.
Exactly. You might be a servant to the system for 10 hours, but for those 10 minutes, or in that specific corner of your mind, you are free. It prevents total erosion.
It keeps a little piece of you safe.
It keeps the pilot light on so that when you eventually leave the situation, there's still a you left to reclaim.
Strategy number 3, refuse to perform suffering. This goes back to what we said about not complaining, but it's a bit different, right?
It is. This is about the suffering Olympics. The text advises us to stop showing off how hard things are. Don't use your pain to get sympathy or validation on social media. Don't brag about how little sleep you got.
Why? Wouldn't venting help?
Venting to a friend is one thing. Performing for an audience is another. When you perform suffering, you are reinforcing the idea that suffering is your identity. You are marketing your pain. The Stoic advice is to be honest about the difficulty, but don't perform it.
It forces you to be real.
It does. It forces you to ask a really hard question. If I can't get sympathy for this, do I still want to be doing it? If the applause stops, is the pain still worth it?
That's a reality check. Strategy number 4 seems like the most critical filter for daily life. Question the necessity.
This is the tool you use every day. The Stoics distinguish between the inevitable and the unnecessary. Is this suffering, like gravity, something I cannot change, like a terminal illness or a natural disaster? Or is this suffering systemic and abusive, like a bad boss or a toxic expectation?
The Stoic accepts gravity.
But refuses to be a voluntary victim of the unnecessary. If it's systemic, you don't just endure it blindly. You navigate it, you plan your exit, or you set boundaries. You don't call it fate when it's just bad management.
Don't call it fate when it's just bad management. I love that.
Yeah.
That needs to be on a t-shirt.
It really does.
And finally, strategy number 5. Live now.
Don't wait for the difficulty to pass to find moments of life. The source says we live in the meanwhile. If you wait for the storm to pass, you might wait forever. Find clarity in life inside the storm.
It sounds like the goal here isn't necessarily to be happy all the time. This isn't a happiness hack.
No. And the outro of the source material is very clear on this. The promised land of Stoicism isn't happiness. Happiness is fleeting, it comes and goes. The goal is clarity. It's self-respect. It's the ability to look in the mirror and know you didn't betray yourself just to fit into a system that grinds people down.
It's about not losing your soul to the grind. It's about agency.
Precisely. It's about being well-informed about your own condition, rather than just well-endured. It's about deciding what is worth suffering for, rather than just suffering because you were told to.
The source material ends with a really haunting question. It stuck with me, and I think we should leave the listeners with that to chew on.
It's a hypothetical that cuts through all the noise. It asks, if tomorrow no one could see your suffering, no one praised it, there was no reward for it, and you wouldn't be called strong for enduring it,
Right.
would you still choose to endure it the way you are right now?
Wow. If the audience is gone, is the performance still worth it?
Exactly. If the answer is no, then you know you're suffering for the wrong reasons. You're suffering for the applause or the identity, not for the outcome.
That is something to really think about on your commute today. Are you training or are you just eroding? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Take care of yourself.
Stay curious and we'll see you next time.